Ok, clase. Para este video, the tema or the tópico is about los verbos that are muy común used in the imperfecto, the imperfect tense. So here they are. Since most mental processes involve duration or continuance or something that's habitual or repetitive, verbs that deal with mental activities or conditions are most often expressed in the imperfect tense in the past. So the most common of those verbs are these. So what I mean by that is these verbs right here, whenever you want to express something that in the past tense and you can't decide preterite or imperfect, and you want to use one of these verbs are used in the imperfect tense most of the time because it expresses something of duration or continuance, which is all about the imperfect tense, right? So here they are. I want you to write these down in their meanings. You know most of them. One or two you don't, but now you do. Your lucky day. Creer means to believe. You know that one. Desear, to desire. You may not know that one. Querer, to want. Tener ganas de, to feel like. We covered this briefly in Spanish 1. Sentir, to feel. Pensar, to think. Preferir, to prefer. Poder, to be able to. Saber, to know. And gustar, which means to like, or technically translated as to be pleasing to. So for each of these verbs, you need to know how to conjugate them in the imperfect tense since you use these in the imperfect. Of course, there are conjugations for these in the preterite tense as well when you want to express something in the past, but more times than not, these verbs are very commonly used in the imperfect tense, okay? So I just conjugated 3 of them, saber, querer, and gustar, just as a kind of a warm-up. You should be able to conjugate the rest, but here's the conjugations of saber, to know. Yo sabía, tú sabías, él, ella, usted sabía, nosotros sabíamos, ellos, ellas, ustedes sabían. Again, ella, ellas, ella, íamos, ian. Y'all know the imperfect tense endings. These 3 are just kind of a warm-up and just a review. Querer, to want. Yo quería, tú querías, él, ella, usted quería, nosotros queríamos, and ellos, ellas, ustedes querían. So I wanted, you wanted, he or she wanted, we wanted, they wanted. And then, of course, gustar, to like. You have to put the pronouns in front of it. So me gustaba, it was pleasing to me, or they were pleasing to me. Te gustaba, it was pleasing to you. Le gustaba, it was pleasing to him or her. Nos gustaba, it was pleasing to us. And les gustaba, it was pleasing to them. Or if you think of it this way, I like, you like, he or she likes, we like, they like. Liked, I'm sorry, in the past tense. Okay, so these are just 3 ejemplos of this little bank of verbs that you should already know how to conjugate, but if not, and you can't get it on top of your head, go back and review the imperfect tense endings, right? The abas and the ias, and conjugate these verbs on your own. Be able to do that. Okay, I just gave you 3 ejemplos, and on this next slide and the last slide, I'm going to show you just some example sentences using these verbs in a given context. So, first one says, ¿Te gustaba jugar videojuegos cuando eras joven? Did you like to play video games when you were young? It's an imperfect tense sentence because we're expressing age, we're expressing when you were young. It's like telling a story, something that was in progress. And we're using the verb gustar. So, again, it's a very commonly used verb, in the imperfect tense. This next sentence says, ¿Sabías usar la computadora cuando eras joven? Did you know how to use the computer when you were young? Again, we're telling, almost like telling a story. It's when you were young, did you do this? Did you do that? And we're using the verb saber, which again is a commonly used verb in the imperfect tense. And finally, here's just another one. ¿Siempre querías salir o preferías quedarte en casa cuando eras joven? Did you always want to leave, or did you prefer to stay at home when you were young? So when you were younger, were you a homebody, or were you someone that always wanted to leave the house? Again, I used the 2 verbs querer and preferir, conjugated as querías and preferías. to mean did you always want to leave or did you prefer. So we're using these in the imperfect as well because they're verbs that are commonly used in the imperfect. And that is really it for this slide. So the main thing I want you to know is that there are a bank of verbs that are more commonly used in the imperfect than they are used in the preterite. And these are these bank of verbs. Know how to conjugate them in the imperfect tense. I give you 3 conjugations, but know how to do the rest. Okay? Adiós y hasta luego.